Scheherazade. The Islamic classical age was not only a time of science, mathematics, and art, but also one of literature. 1001 Nights, also known as Arabian Nights, is a collection of folk tales dating from this time. Different copies have different stories, but they all share the story of Scheherazade. Scheherazade was a great heroine. She was a brave woman trying to help her father, and through her cleverness and imagination, she turned a difficult situation into a triumph. The Three Apples, one of the original tales from the 1001 Nights, is thought to be one of the earliest detective stories in literature. Scheherazade recounts the tale of the three apples. Once upon a time there was a cruel king. It was whispered that he had once been a good man, but that a romantic tragedy had turned his heart to stone. Every day the king would order his advisers to find him a bride. They would marry at sunset, but by dawn the woman was cast aside, declared unworthy by the king. The brides tried everything to please the king. They sang, they danced, they played, but in vain. Some went quietly, some begged for another chance, others called insults, but in the end all were dismissed. Each day the king's chief adviser, his vizier, was forced to seek a new bride. But news of the king's behavior had spread. Soon not a woman could be found on the streets. They were all locked in their houses, with the shutters closed and the doors barred. One day the vizier was forced to return empty-handed. He worried that the king would punish him for his failure. Scheherazade, his daughter, saw that the vizier was in distress. She loved her father very much and decided to help him by offering herself as the next bride. She marched into the palace and to the king. Despite the vizier's protests, the marriage took place. The king turned to his new bride. Others have tried to amuse me, Scheherazade, he said. Let us see if you can succeed where they failed. Scheherazade calmly sat down before him. It would be an honor to entertain you, my lord. I'm afraid I do not sing, or play, or dance, but I will tell you a story. The story of the three apples. I can't sleep. Jafar, the caliph's vizier, looked up from his books. Cannot sleep, or commander of the faithful. Every night I am racked by nightmares. My people are abused by those I trust while I sit, ignorant and betrayed. Jafar rushed to reassure. Surely not. Your governors and officials are honest men. They care for the people as you do, your majesty. Don't try to comfort me, Jafar. My dreams are sending me a message, and I will not ignore them. Come, we will walk the streets and talk to my subjects. There they spied an old bent man hobbling along, carrying a crate for fish upon his head and a net in his hand. As he walked, the peasant grumbled to himself, It is terrible being poor. There is never enough food, and the street dogs chase me for the fish I carry. I am oppressed by the wealthy, but when I complain, no one listens. I am old and tired. Life is a burden. The caliph heard the man and turned to his vizier. See, I was right. All is not well with my people. I will talk with this man. Accosting the old gentleman, the caliph asked him, "Why are you upset, old man?" The poor man answered, "My lord, I am a fisherman. All day I have cast my nets, but have not found a single thing for my family's supper. I am in despair." The caliph was appalled. "Come to the bank of the Tigris with me," he offered. "Whatever you pull up in your net, I will exchange for 100 gold pieces." The fisherman could not believe his luck and hurried as fast as his tired old legs could carry him. Reaching the river, he cast his net. He tried to pull it ashore, only to discover it was almost too heavy to move. Having with all his strength, he dragged the net onto the banks of the river. Inside he saw a heavy chest. The caliph kept his word and handed the money to the fisherman, who left happy. His family would eat well for many nights to come. The caliph was eager to open the chest and discover that might be found. Lifting the lid, he peered inside, only to stumble back in horror. Inside the chest was a woman's dead body. "We will avenge her death," the caliph announced. "I will not allow any man or woman to kill one of my subjects." Jafar protested. "Your Majesty, how are we to do such a thing? We don't even know who she is." The caliph looked at his vizier with narrowed eyes. "We will find the killer, Jafar. In fact, you will find him. And if you do not discover the murderer in 3 days, I will see you punished in his place." Jafar trembled in fear. He rushed home and locked himself into his bedroom. Pacing up and down the floor, he desperately tried to find a way out of his trap, but he had no idea how to find the killer of the unknown woman. The 3 days dragged by, but Jafar did not act. He did not even stir out of the house. On the third day, when he did not appear before the caliph, soldiers were sent to drag him out of his house and into the palace. "Did you find the killer?" the caliph demanded. "No, O commander of the faithful," the miserable vizier was forced to reply. The caliph sighed. "It seems that not only were you not successful, you did not even try. Very well. I said you would be punished, and I will keep my word." Just at that moment, 2 guards rushed in. "Your Majesty, 2 men were demanded to see you. They say that it concerns the dead woman." The caliph arched an eyebrow. "Bring them in." 2 men were brought in and fell to their knees before the caliph. The first, a young man, said, "I come to confess. I slew the woman. Punish me as you see fit." The second man, much older, broke in, "No, O commander of the faithful, it was I. I killed the woman. I should be punished, not this young man. This was a puzzle. First, there were no culprits. Now, there were too many. The caliph separated the two men and asked each to describe what he had done. Only the young man could describe killing the woman, placing her into the chest and throwing it into the river. The older man, he explained, was his father. He had only confessed to protect his son. Why? The caliph demanded of the young man. Did you kill this poor woman? Scheherazade. At this, Scheherazade stopped. It is late, your majesty, and I am very tired. If I am to be dismissed tomorrow, I would at least like to live with my eyes open. I will go to bed now. Go to bed? Splendid the king. But I don't know why the woman was killed. You can't stop now. I order you to continue. Scheherazade raised an eyebrow. My lord, forgive me. But I know you always cast your wives aside. Why should I do as you ask? At least, if I am to be humiliated in the morning, I can do so with a good night's sleep. The king hesitated. No one had ever defied his orders before. What if I did not dismiss you tomorrow? He asked. Will you tell the story then? Scheherazade smiled to herself. All was going to plan. I will, your majesty, but not until tomorrow. If I am still here, I will continue them. Gradually, the king agreed. The following night, Scheherazade came to him again and continued her story. Remember the young man? She asked the king. He was about to explain why he murdered the woman in the chest. This was his story. The young man's story to the caliph. The young man turned to the caliph and spoke. I loved my wife very much, O commander of the faithful. We had 3 wonderful children together. One day, my wife fell ill. No doctor could cure her, and I feared for her life. I begged her to tell me what would make her more comfortable, and she asked for only one thing, some apples. Now, as you know, apples are hard to find this time of year, but I was determined to give my wife what she desired. I searched every orchard and talked to every merchant, but no apples could be found in the end. I traveled for many days to your own gardens. Your gardeners sold me the apples for 3 dinars. Rushing back to her bedside, I gave her the apples she desired. But by then her fever had become worse, and she showed no interest in the apples I had worked so hard to find. Soon after, my wife's condition began to improve. Her life was no longer at risk, and thankful, I returned to work. One day, a tall man walked into my shop carrying an apple. I recognized it immediately and asked him where he had received it. My girlfriend gave it to me, the tall man said. Her fool of a husband rushed halfway round the country to find her apples. She didn't want them, though, so she gave one to me. You can imagine my fury. I, who had been so worried, by my wife's illness that I would do anything to help her was betrayed. I rushed home to confront my wife. Sure enough, by her bed there were 2 apples, not 3. When I questioned her, she claimed not to know where the third apple had gone. A red mist fell over my eyes. I was so angry that I killed her, and I placed her body into the chest you see before you. The caliph listened to the man's story in horror and surprise. "But why did you confess your crime?" he asked. "Because I discovered that my wife was innocent," the young man cried. "The next day my youngest son came to me. He confessed that he had stolen the apple, only to have it stolen from him in turn. A tall man had come across my son playing. My son told him the story of my search for the fruit, and the tall man grabbed the apple from him. It was clear this was the same man who had entered my shop. He had lied to me about his girlfriend, using the story to cover up his theft. In his defense, I do not think he knew I was the husband." "What a tragedy!" the caliph cried. "But it is clear that the tall man, too, must be punished. Jafar, you escaped this time, but now you must find me this man. You have 3 days." Poor Jafar, he had escaped his punishment only to find himself in exactly the same position. Again, he locked himself indoors and sat trembling for 3 days. On the third day, once again soldiers came to drag Jafar to the palace. The vizier hugged his children one by one to say goodbye. When he came to his youngest child, he felt a hard, round object in her jacket. Pulling it out, he saw it was an apple. "Where did you get this?" he asked his child. "Our servant, Ryan, gave it to me," she replied. Jafar called his servant, a tall man, and took him to the palace. There, with the caliph, he discovered the truth. It had been Jafar's own servant who had stolen the apple. The caliph could not believe the coincidence. "I have never heard such a story in my life," he exclaimed. "It is remarkable," agreed Jafar, "but not as remarkable as the story of Nur al-Din Ali and his son. I will tell you that story now." Scheherazade. At that moment, Scheherazade once more stopped her tale. "I am tired again, your majesty," she explained. "I will sleep now." But how could the story of Nur al-Din Ali be more remarkable than that of the 3 apples? The king demanded. "I suppose we shall never know, since I leave the palace tomorrow," Scheherazade calmly replied. Once more the king could not bear to miss the rest of the tale. He gave Scheherazade another day in the palace so that she could continue her story. For 1,001 nights the pattern continued. Scheherazade would weave a magical tale and always stop when it became most interesting. Each night the king allowed her to stay another day to hear the rest of the story. Slowly the king fell in love. Through Scheherazade's influence, he became a good and just king. They lived happily ever after.